So, where is the UNSC Infinity? What happened to it during Halo Infinite and where is it right now? As of now, we have absolutely no idea as to where the Infinity might be, and the main reason for that is due to the story not fully explaining it to us within the base game. However, there are some very subtle hints throughout the campaign in a couple of audio logs and even some concept art that we'll get into a little bit later as to what actually happened to the UNSC Infinity within the Halo Infinite campaign. Alongside this as well, what happened to a couple of the main members and crew members aboard the Infinity at the time of the attack of the Banished, and that they're all together in the same place. Today I wanted to discuss what happened to the UNSC Infinity in more detail, what happened to it in general, and the mystery behind the missing ship. The largest flagship in the UNSC, taken over by the Banished in just 4 minutes. Just completely vanished. Well, I'm going to give you guys all the need to know information currently around the Infinity and the theories later on in the video as to how we could see it return into the game. If you've gone to enjoy this video, guys, do be sure to drop a like, it'd be very much appreciated. Subscribe if you are brand new to the channel as well, and ring that notification bell to be notified when a video does go live. But guys, let's get into it. As usual, guys, before we do get into the video, make sure you check the timestamps in the description down below to be able to skip to any part of the video that you would like to that sparks your interest if you wanted to do that. Now, strictly talking about the events within Halo Infinite, parts of that story are told to us via audio logs and dialogue in-game. And this is due to, of course, the hellish development that was branded by some of the developers that had left, and that they had to cut 2/3 of the campaign from the actual game. So a lot of what should have been in the game and a lot of the reasons why there are so many holes in the story is because of the cut content. However, what we do know is where the Infinity was before the game, and this was told to us in a series of audio logs, and how it got to Zeta Halo. I've done so many videos on breaking down everything in Halo Infinite, from how the Infinity got there, where it was before, and just literally everything you can imagine. I've probably done a video on it. So make sure you guys go and check out my previous videos if you're interested in any of the topics around Halo Infinite and want some things explaining or clarifying. I'm sure I've done a video on it somewhere in the past. So prior to the events of Halo Infinite, the UNSC Infinity housed a total of approximately 7,000 crew members, and this was also said at the very beginning of Halo Infinite and in some of the audio logs as well. Bearing in mind that just 1 year previous to this date, 2559, the Infinity had a crew capacity of approximately 17,000 crew members. So going into the conflict of Zeta Halo, the ship was extremely undermanned. Now, why was it like this, you may ask? Well, you got to bear in mind as well that during this time in particular, the created conflict was in full force by Cortana, with Cortana going full crazy mode, attempting to cleanse the universe and expand upon her created army, thinking that the humanity's AIs were the rightful holders of the mantle of responsibility. Maybe a lot of the crew members left the UNSC Infinity to help in other areas of the universe, in UNSC outposts or any other colonies or worlds that potentially needed that assistance, or being sent on secretive missions like we've seen with Spartan Locke, Blue Team, and other teams as well. So there are 4 data logs that you can unlock as you progress through the Halo Infinite campaign. These are from the perspectives of Dr. Halsey on the Infinity and details the start of the story. Halsey realizing that the only way to stop Cortana is by locking her down, and by doing that it would require another smart AI, which they later went on to name the Weapon. The Chief was ordered by Halsey and Lasky to move onto the planet Reach, fly to Halsey's laboratory and collect one of the many copies of Halsey's neural pathway, the same thing that Cortana was created from, to make a copy and eventually lock down Cortana. Once obtained, the Chief and Blue Team flew back to the Infinity and Halsey initiated the core initiation on the Weapon. Now, fast forwarding to the start of Halo Infinite, they slip space to Zeta Halo, and we could even see this from Cortana's perspective in game when she was speaking to Despondent Pyre in one of the campaign cutscenes. However, shortly after they slipped space to Zeta Halo, the Banished predicted their arrival and infiltrated the Infinity, and that was the start of the cutscene in Halo Infinite. It took approximately 4 minutes for the Banished to take over the UNSC Infinity, UNSC's largest flagship, by a country mile, before the crew on board eventually evacuated to the ring, or unfortunately killed by the Banished. So in these next few minutes of the video, this is the most important part and basically will tell us where the Infinity went and what happened to the crew members aboard the ship and where they went to. Now, when you take over the forward operating bases within Halo Infinite, there are multiple audio logs which you can collect, which actually tell you what happened to the UNSC Infinity at the start of the game. The Banished infiltrated it, they defended it, and evacuated. However, in the final audio log, we actually hear that Captain Lasky evacuated on a Pelican and was the final Pelican available on the UNSC Infinity, and he was escorted to that Pelican by Sergeant Hudson Griffin. So Griffin stayed behind and Lasky escaped, trying to get down to a place on the ring. However, his last few words of this transmission are the most important ones to take into account, and they're ones that you may have missed or just skipped over without really thinking about it at all, and it does tell us quite a lot.
This is Lasky to all hands. The Infinity has been compromised. All remaining crew should immediately evacuate and make for the surface. Rendezvous coordinates incoming. No matter what happens, we have to make sure that
The crew members should immediately evacuate, and the rendezvous coordinates will be sent to them accordingly. After this, Lasky's communications cut out, but it does show there's a set location which was communicated to the evacuees to go to on the ring. Now, some of them, like the Spartans that we came across from the campaign and the Marines within the forward operating bases, may have just landed wherever they could have. Or they could have landed before receiving these coordinates from Captain Lasky, or they didn't receive them at all, or even they were under so much fire that they just needed to get out of there, and that part of the ring was the only place that they could land. But what about the other thousands of crew members that were a part of the UNSC Infinity at the time? What happened to them during this game? Well, unless they were unfortunately killed by the Banished, they would have found a way into these coordinates sent by Captain Lasky. So we can potentially expect that in DLC 1, we can see the UNSC have a camp of some sort set up, with a lot of the crew members from the Infinity around that camp. Potentially people like Lasky, Halsey, other high profile members of the UNSC as well. Palmer could also be another one too. Again, this goes back to the question, what about the Infinity? Now, for me personally, I don't think that the Infinity and the coordinates that have been sent by Lasky would have been in the same location. I just don't think that would have been the case. Because again, how is Lasky going to know where the Infinity is going to crash land? So I think the Infinity is in a completely separate part of the ring, and I think Lasky is also in a completely separate part of the ring, which opens up the options for a really cool opening mission into DLC 1. Find the Infinity. But anyway, going back to the video, what about the Infinity? Well, to determine this, I want to go back to some concept art around the Infinity that I came across within some of the videos and actually showed within some videos from my cut content series. And yeah, this may be concept, it may have been cut from the base game, or it could be concept art that could be used within future DLC, which for me seems very likely, and you'll see why in just a moment. The first set of concepts show essentially the beginning of the trailer and how it was initially envisioned, which again is really cool. However, we also then go on to see a few other concepts around the Infinity actually falling onto the ring, and we know that it did fall onto some part of the ring as this was mentioned by some of the characters within the campaign, so it's no surprise that the Infinity is somewhere on Zeta Halo, we just don't know where at this point. Maybe some of the soldiers seen it crash land, and maybe we can see it from their perspective in a cutscene within DLC. Anyway, after we see some of the concepts of the Infinity falling, there are also a couple of concepts showing the Infinity being so damn big that it's actually peeking out of the Zeta Halo ring's atmosphere. Whether this is the Infinity still falling in the process, I don't really know, but it's a really cool concept. But it just shows the sheer size of the Infinity. Now, the most interesting one for me is actually this concept right here, which I actually use a lot in some of my concept videos. I put it on Twitter, I show it in some of my posts, and you'll probably see it in the thumbnail of this video. The UNSC Infinity crash landed and overgrown by nature. Now, we don't know how far into the future DLC is set, but what we do know, bearing in mind, is that the Chief was floating in space for a 6-month-long period, and at the very start of that 6-month period, the Infinity had crashed. So potentially within that 6-month-long period, nature could have took over the UNSC Infinity with it having no crew member to control it or try and repair it. Or another scenario is that the Banished could have taken over the Infinity and started to set up a base around it, or they could rip apart and use it for parts and make different vehicles and systems around that as well. But again, this could be a DLC mission where we have to try and infiltrate and take back the Infinity, which I think would be really cool. And that would be then the UNSC's forward operating base moving forward, similar to the Mortal Reveri base we've got at the moment, which was Outpost Tremonius. We now have the Infinity within DLC, which we use as sort of an outpost for the crew of the Infinity to try and get the ship back up and running. However, another massive thing we do need to consider as well is Roland. What happened to Roland during this whole process? Roland was a shipboard AI on the Infinity. I think he manually maybe landed the Infinity and prevented it from being completely destroyed, and potentially that was how the Infinity is still in some form of structure and it's not completely destroyed. So this could open our eyes to DLC being epic and involving a load of missions around taking back the Infinity, repairing the Infinity. Potentially we need to also do some fetch missions to try and get parts for the Infinity, or the Banished have taken something so we need to go retrieve it back and stuff like this to try and extend out the life of the campaign. So potentially this is something that we could see within Halo Infinite coming in the future. I don't know, but I do think that the Infinity will have a lot of missions around it within DLC. As Captain Keyes always famously said in Halo Combat Evolved,
"The protocol is clear. Destruction or capture of a shipboard AI is absolutely unacceptable, and that means you're leaving ship. Lock in a selection of emergency landing zones, upload them to my neural lace, and then sort yourself for a hard transfer."
Aye, aye, sir.
So I think maybe if we find or meet up with Lasky again, we will need to try and extract Roland somehow from the Infinity if it's not salvageable. If it is, potentially Roland can stay on the Infinity and try and repair his systems from his side. But again, we have a lot to discuss, a lot to think about, a lot to ponder over with DLC, and I'm really excited to see where 343 take it and the direction that we go. But guys, what do you think happened to the UNSC Infinity? Unfortunately, there is no location on Zeta Halo that we have been told about or that we know within the lore anywhere to know where the Infinity actually is at this moment in time. Everything at the moment is speculation, but what we do know is that it's landed on the ring somewhere, and from that point on, we potentially from this concept art know that it's been sat somewhere for a long time. We know that Lasky and all of the other crew members has gone to another part of the ring and had sent coordinates out to go to a particular part of the ring which was different to the Infinity, because how would they know where it would crash land? And for all we know, the whole crew members could be back on the Infinity working on it right now as we speak, but we don't know that, and it's very unlikely that that is the case. But guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Smash a like if you have, subscribe down below as well if you've enjoyed the content. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Speak soon and take care.